Howdy, senior readers. Remember that Mater from Cars? I'm back. I just realized I got a bunch more stuff done. I'm knocking stuff down. I'm shooting it out of the sky like crazy. And I got to go fast because the Leafs game's about to start in 10, 12 minutes or so. And they just got word that Morgan Riley's out long term on the defense. So that's going to make things even better. Yay. So the season just keeps getting more and more interesting. But I'm not here for hockey right now. I'm here for stuff because I love stuff. I love reading stuff. I love watching stuff. I love playing stuff. So right now I have 5 stuff things to go over. The first of which is the 4th book in the Blackthorn Key series called Call of the Wraith. So in this story, young Christopher Rowe, the apothecary apprentice of his former master Benedict Blackthorn, who has perished, the book opens with him having this weird kind of nightmare dream where he's in the cold and the evil raven is talking to him and everything's so cold and he feels like he's gonna die and things are very confusing and weird. After this dream, he wakes up and he has no idea where he is. He is in this little shack, and he starts to panic and he wakes up and he realizes he has no memories of himself. He doesn't know who he is, where he is, what he's doing. All he knows is facts, basic facts. And when he finally comes to and some people come to talk to him, and he realizes he's on a farm in Devonshire. A guy named Robert owns the farm, and Robert's old friend Wise is the one who rescued Christopher, who they assume was in a shipwreck and got trapped in the snow and was almost frozen to death when they took him in, and they nursed him back to health for like 13 days, and he had fever and all sorts of other shit going on. And so finally he's back to health, but he has no idea who he is. So this Robert gives him some of his stuff back, his apothecary sash, and he knows all the vials in it and what they do. So he knows all this stuff. He just doesn't know who he is and what he does. And so he asks Robert, he says, where can I go to try and get my memories back? Like, who would be able to possibly help me with this? And Robert says, Old Sybil. Many believe she's a witch, but I know otherwise. So Christopher heads out into the snowy tundra and goes to visit this old Sybil. He never makes it there because all of a sudden a young woman named Sally intercepts him and is so overjoyed to see Christopher, but he's like, I don't know who you are. And she's like, but I'm Sally. I'm your best friend, or one of your best friends. And then not long after Sally's there, Tom comes in, who is Christopher's actual best friend. Those are his 2 best friends in the world who he's done all this adventuring with. And he has to inform them that he has no memories. He woke up on a farm after nearly freezing to death and had all sorts of stuff, and he knows nothing. And it's at this point where they notice a young girl who's been following Christopher, and there was a little 5-year-old girl in the cabin with Christopher that the 2 guys also found almost frozen to death not long after they found Christopher. But she won't talk to anybody, she won't do anything, but she's for some reason followed Christopher to this on this adventure of his. So Tom and Sally are like, well, let's go back to the town of Seaton where we have a room at an inn, and we'll regroup and figure out what we're going to do. So they go back there, and they're eating, they're resting, and they hear tales of some bad tidings in Devonshire, specifically some young children that are going missing. And so with Tom and Sally's help, Christopher drafts a letter to send back to Lord Ashcombe to inform him that, I'm safe, I'm okay, and there's weird stuff going on here, so send help or whatever. But they don't expect any action on this for at least a couple weeks, if not more, because of all the snow. So they decide to take matters into their own hands. They want to investigate. They got nothing but time on their hands. They got all the money because they're emissaries of the king undercover. So they want to help solve this children crisis. So they end up going on this adventure that takes them to visit this old Sybil, back to Robert Dryden's farm. They go visit a wealthy baron. Baron named Edmund Darcy, who they think can help shed light on the situation, and eventually to an apparently haunted village called Hook Redale, where they think they're going to find the answers to everything. But as they go along and the clues start to unravel, nothing makes any sense, and it just gets stranger and stranger. But as Christopher starts to get his memories back and starts to regain that acumen he has of the brain sac, they eventually start to unravel everything, and it just turns into this super exciting adventure that we'll see our heroes hopefully win the day yet again. So that was that book. The other book I read my book. The Hockey News, A Century of Hockey. This was one of my uncles picked this up for me, I think at a garage sale, and I just finished reading it not so long ago. It was published sometime after the 99-2000 season, so it's about 20 years in the past. But it basically goes over the last century of hockey up to that point, so all of the 1900s. It begins with a foreword by Bobby Orr, one of the game's most influential players, and then a brief article on him and how he changed the game, before going into some brief going overs of the game's early roots in like the 1800s. And then it glosses over a few different periods at the start of the 1900s, from about 1900 to 1917, and a few eras within those years where certain things happened. Professionalism arose and all that stuff. And if you remember, not that many videos ago, probably I actually read a book called what was it? A Great Game. I can't remember, but it was all about the rise of professional hockey in the early 1900s and the opposition against it and how everything came about and the NHL came about. So a little bit of a gloss over on that subject. But then starting with the 1917-1918 season, it goes through every NHL season up to 99-2000, and it glosses over like 3 of the main storylines from each season, the biggest impact player of the season and what they did, who won the Stanley Cup that year, and then a few other little fact nuggets in trivia and stuff. And after it goes through all those years, it has like a breakdown of all the Stanley Cup winners. It has a list of the 40 greatest individual seasons, so focusing on one player and a particular season they had, and how it was such an amazing season. So they have the top 40 of those. So Bobby Orr and Wayne Gretzky are in the top 10 a lot. Bobby Orr, set the scoring record for defensemen with like 137 points or something like that. And he was the only defenseman to ever win like an Art Ross scoring trophy and the Hart Trophy and all these things at once. Like, he really did, and he changed the game with his rushing style and his reckless abandon in taking the attack to the other team from the defensive position. So and then of course Gretzky, and I mean, he holds so many records, and I mean 200 how many points did he have that one season? 212 or 200 something, with 92 goals. Like, it's just insane looking back on that and going, holy shit. And then of course there's Phil Esposito with his 76 goals, which was a big landmark back in the 70s. Maurice Richard, the first person to score 50 goals, and then a bunch of other stuff like that from throughout mostly the modern era. I'm not sure what the years are on it exactly, but it's more recent, not super old. There are some like George Hainsworth's shutout records and stuff like that, but most of it's within the last 40-50 years probably. And then at the end there's a couple hypotheticals, like if you could take all the players from across the modern era, they built a hypothetical perfect NHL team out of all the players they had at their disposal, and then they did the same thing for a world team with players from other countries that never played in the NHL but played in world championships, Olympics, stuff like that. So very informative book and very nostalgic for me, because I grew up in the 80s and 90s watching Gretzky and Lemieux and all those top tier guys as I was growing up, and when you're young, that's when you're most impressionable, and the things you remember from your childhood are probably the things you remember the most and the most positively, right? So reading about Gretzky's records and all those other guys, the Oiler dynasties, the Penguin Stanley Cups in the early 90s and all that stuff, like I remember it like it was yesterday, right? So it's kind of a nice trip down memory lane in a way. Next up, I finally watched Avengers Endgame, which not watching this movie for this long has been holding me back on watching like the latest Spider-Man movie that was out and some other stuff too that kind of took place after this, but I didn't want to watch because I didn't want to spoil what happened during this, right? So Endgame starts about 3 weeks after Thanos destroyed half of the galaxy's population and created his ideal paradise. And the Avengers, Tony Stark has been trapped in the Guardians ship in outer space with Nebula for that long, and he's just about at the end of his rope. He's just about to pass when Captain Marvel finally shows up, whisks the ship back to Earth, and reunites the Avengers with Tony. Although there's lots of tension between him and Cap, as that's continued on since the whole sign the pact thing, which totally Team Cap on that one. But they eventually decide that they have to track down Thanos. They have to take the gauntlet from him, and they have to use the stones in the gauntlet to reverse what he's done and make things back to right. They track him to some planet out in the galaxy that's uninhabited, apparently, and when they find him, he's in a much diminished, weakened state, and he says, I used the stones to destroy the stones. I'd like to have seen that happen, actually. And so he says, you can't do anything because they no longer exist. So Thor gets mightily pissed, beheads the big purple monster, and that's the end of that. So then they have to settle into life with it being the way it is now. There's no hope for going back. So 5 years pass, and people are adjusting and grieving in their own different ways, but Earth is a mess. Nobody's able to move on. Everybody on Earth had at least someone, friends or family or whatever, suddenly taken from them. So that much death and loss on such a global scale has turned Earth into a bit of a cesspool. But one day in a storage facility, a rat climbs all over the dashboard in Scott Lang's van, and suddenly a device within the back is activated, and Scott Lang, the Ant-Man, comes shooting out the back of it. He's like, whoa. And then he gets up and he notices Earth and he goes, double whoa, what the hell happened here? He goes to see the Avengers. They fill him in on what happened 5 years ago, what's happened since. And Scott's like, I got an idea. He says, you guys may have lived the past 5 years. It just took me 5 hours for these 5 years to pass. So it's been nagging at him that if they could find a way to manipulate the quantum realm where he was stuck for those 5 hours, aka 5 years, and go in and out at certain points however they wished, they could theoretically use it as a time machine, go back, get the stones before Thanos ever found them, ensure that he never gets them, and ensure that all the death never happens. There's only one man they know that can help them with that, though, and it's Tony Stark. So Black Widow, Cap, and Ant-Man go to visit Tony, who's living in this kind of nice log cabin out by a lake. He's got a young daughter named Morgan now. He's, I guess, as happy as he can be after all that happened. And he tells them to screw off. He wants no part in it. He doesn't want to lose what he's got now with his young, or I guess he's not young, but with his new family. And he doesn't want to put that at risk, even to save everybody else, potentially. He says it's a big potential. But as he ruminates on it and he sees a picture of him and Spider-Man on his mantle while he's cleaning dishes, he's like, oh, Spider-Man's dead. I should really do something about that. And so he solved this little problem in his off time at his house. And after a conversation with Pepper, he goes back to the Avengers and said, I've done it. We can time travel. So they formulate a strategy, and soon after, a mission is launched on different fronts all together simultaneously. A number of our heroes are going to go back in time to certain destinations where they know the stones are going to be, and they're going to grab them and get out and get back. So Thor and Rocket go to Asgard in 2013, I think it is, where they plan on taking the, I forget which all the different stones are, but there's a stone inside of Jane Foster, and they're going to extract that and take it with them. And Thor may find something else while he's in Asgard as well, a little item. Who else? Black Widow and Hawkeye go to Vormir in 2014, I believe it is, to get the Soul Stone, I think that one is. But that doesn't end very well. They get the stone, but it comes at a price. Black Widow dies, if you haven't seen it yet. It's been too long, so no spoiler alert on this one. You should have seen it by now, like me. Next, who else? Okay. War Machine and Nebula go to, what is it called? Morgar, or some weird alien planet. The one where Star-Lord at the beginning of the first Guardians went and got the stone, and he was singing the song and dancing along and kicking those little creatures out of the way. They go and get that stone before he arrives. And that's 3 stones. Yeah, so then the rest of the missions are in New York. They're all in New York. So Bruce Banner, Cap, Tony Stark, and Ant-Man. The 4 of them all go to New York in 2012. Bruce Banner goes to the Sanctor, whatever it's called, where Doctor Strange lives, and to get the Time Stone. Cap gets one of the other stones from Stark Tower, and then another stone is in Stark Tower, but Ant-Man and Tony botch it and don't get it, so then they have to create a workaround to go back even further in time to get that stone in a previous destination before that. So eventually they're all successful. They all come back. They've got the stones, but they lose Black Widow, and Nebula doesn't make it back because the psychic link between, or the cybernetic link, I guess, between her and her past self when she was back in time misfire on each other, and she gets trapped there. Thanos learns of it. He captures her. He reads all of her memories, so he's now aware of what they're doing going back in time to get the stones. So then he formulates his strategy to counter theirs, and then it just all ends in another huge battle to stop Thanos once again and bring back all their friends and that sort of thing. So really good movie. I liked it a lot better than Age of Infinity. That's what it's called. I forget. I thought it was a lot faster. Like the Age of Infinity, or the Infinity. What the hell was that called anyway? The one before this, I don't remember. But the Infinity one, I found a lot of really slow spots in it that, sometimes slow scenes are needed for story development or whatever. But I found in that movie there was a lot of slow parts, and I was just like, this is unnecessary. And I mean, these are long movies, right? Like, I know you want to get a lot of screen time for all these guys and make it this huge production, but sometimes less is more, right? You hear that in everything. You hear that in hockey. You hear that in I hear that in hockey, but you hear it everywhere, and in this case too, I think that applies. And you know what, they did a lot better job with that on this movie than the previous one. I really liked it. It was a kind of a nice send-off for Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. Too bad to see Black Widow die, because I love ScarJo as her character, and I can't wait to see kind of now that I'm able to watch movies that happen after this. I can't wait to see kind of what the next kind of time period or not reboot, but the next era of Marvel movies has in store for after this little story arc. Next up, a couple games are the last things I have to offer here. First up, Gran Turismo 5 for the PS3. Gran Turismo is my favorite racing sim series out there. When Gran Turismo, the original, came out, and then Gran Turismo 2 came out not long afterwards for the PS1, I was obsessed. I remember a summer sitting in one of those big, satellite dish chairs with the big pillow. Nice sunny day out there. Nope, I'm Turismoing today. And I would just race and race and race. And it's one of my favorite, those are 2 of my favorite games of all time. Not just racing games, but games in general. And the formula is pretty simple. You have all these cars to purchase that you can choose from. There's all these different restrictions, so you can only enter certain cars in certain races, and as you advance, you get bigger, better, more expensive cars and do bigger, better races with more rewards. You can tune your cars, you can buy different wheels for them and make them look a little different, paint jobs, that sort of thing. And it's just an addictive game. You just want to buy as many cars as you can, try different cars, complete all the races and win the game, and it just keeps you enthralled. Now, I tried Gran Turismo 3 on the PS2 maybe a couple years ago. Got into it a bit and then just kind of lost interest. And I didn't know if it was just me being weird or if it was something about the game. I've got Gran Turismo 4 for the PS2, but I haven't played it yet. But I just started this one anyways last year or whenever. And great looking game. Very consistent with the Gran Turismo experience. They have a new feature. I don't know if it was new in this one or if it was in 4 or whatever, but there's you can do all the events in actually race them as usual. That's the way the games are. But then this one also has an alternate mode where you can hire a driver, well, not create a driver and employ this driver and have him race the races for you, and you just coach him and tell him, okay, pace up, overtake this guy. You're kind of like his crew chief, right? Yelling from the sidelines and telling him what to do. It's a good mode for just like running it while you're doing something else, and the game kind of takes care of itself, and you can earn some credits without having to invest all that much time in it. But the thing that got me with this game, I didn't finish it. I got fairly long into it, but I didn't get all the events done, especially on the last two kind of series, because I couldn't find the cars. Like, there's a lot of cars in this game, but not all of them are available at the dealership. So when I was looking at some of these later events that are really hard to beat and you need really nice cars, I was looking at like, okay, what are the typical cars that would enter this race? And it's this car, this car, this car, this car, this car. So I go to all the different dealerships and look for the car. They're never there. I'm like, how the hell am I supposed to beat this if I can't enter a car that's got a shot at it, right? So, and I read online, it's like, well, you have to go to the used dealership, which cycles through every 4 days or something like that, and hope one comes up. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, that's the first two Turismo games were perfect because, you know what, here's all the cars, you don't have to unlock any or wait for them to come up in some stupid fucking used dealership, and here's how much they cost. All you have to do is do the work, put in the time, make the money, and you can buy whatever you want. There's nothing holding you back, and you can race to your heart's content. And now I find with, you know, as soon as games get into the whole online thing and all this nonsense, it cheapens them. And that's what I found with this game. Although it looked great and it played great and it was fun while it kind of lasted, as soon as I got into that kind of part where it's like, I tried a lot of times. I went on and I was like, okay, let's see if I can find this car today or this car. No, I can find none of them, so I can't do anything again. So it was just like, just last week or something. I keep spitting everywhere. I finally said, fuck this, I'm done with this game. You know, I played enough that I feel I got the used price, $4 I paid for this used. I feel I got my $4 worth at least on it with how much I got done on it. And I refused to sink any more time into it when I knew I was just going to go on every time and go, oh, I can't do anything. So I'll still give it a 6 because it is fun. But 1 and 2 are both 10s. So, and they're way older than that game. So it just goes to show, new and online doesn't necessarily mean better, kids. You remember that. Last thing, my cousin loaned me this game a little while ago before Christmas, Thanksgiving, something like that. It's one of the Telltale games, so you know the ones like the Minecraft story mode. So it's kind of like this big long movie, and you just watch it unfold, and you choose your character's choices along the way. You choose what they say and how they interact with the other people in the story, and during action sequences, you have to sometimes move or press buttons in certain orders to successfully navigate them. This story, The Wolf Among Us, is like, it is so neat. I didn't know what to expect when I saw the cover. I was like, this looks cool, but I don't know what it's going to be. So basically, all the fairy tale characters, like the Three Little Pigs, you know, all those guys, Cinderella, the Sleeping Beauty, Beauty and the Beast, all that nonsense, Pinocchio, I think. Was he in the game? I don't know. But Tweedledee and Tweedledum, they've moved to New York City, and they are using these glamours to hide their true nature and blend in with society, and hired as the sheriff to oversee the safety of all these fables, is what they're called, is Sheriff Bigby, who is the big bad wolf. So you are the character Bigby, and you're as the game starts out, you're kind of out on your normal kind of rounds and meet a girl who's having a argument with the woodsman, and not long afterwards you find her head on your building's front step. There's been a murder. So then you investigate it, and as it unravels, you deal with more and more different fables. You're trying to figure out who's behind it all, and it's just this kind of mystery adventure featuring these fairy tales and different characters. And the one thing I really liked about it is that I didn't expect it to be so violent and such bad language. It's awesome. There's F-bombs, there's MF-bombs, there's bullshit. That's one of the, like, if Big B ever has a bullshit option, it's what I'm choosing. I love it when he says bullshit. So it was just this really neat game with a really cool story and such a different kind of idea that, you know, recycles these old characters that kind of, you know, fairy tales are boring. Like Cinderella, oh God, spare me. But, you know, put them into this kind of scenario with bad language and mucho violence, and you know what? It works. It's great. It's fantastic. And yeah, this is probably one of the biggest surprises I've played all year. And because, you know, I like the Minecraft story mode games. I hate regular Minecraft. I find it so boring and pointless. But I liked the story mode adventures. I thought they were kind of cool and something a little different. But still, the whole time, you're not really playing. You're just choosing, right? But this game was actually, for one of those games where you just make decisions for somebody, it was actually a ton of fun and very entertaining. So, and it's like, I think it's like 2014 or 2000. Yeah, something like that. I don't know. But it's not new. So it should be, if you can find it, pretty cheap. So yeah, super good surprise. But that's it. Those are the 5 items that I wanted to report on. I think I took a lot longer on this than I expected to. The game's probably already started, but you know what? I'm going to shut her down and I'm going to go check. So until tomorrow morning when I report on what's going on up there on my TV, you have a great night.